Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going on a journey into the world of stories.
Right.
Not just enjoying them,
Yeah.
but understanding how they work.
Yeah.
You ever get so lost in a book or a movie you feel like you're
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
right there
For sure.
in the action?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to uncover how stories achieve that.
Yeah.
Like lifting the curtain to see the wizard behind the magic.
Yeah. It's amazing how they can make you feel so many different
Right.
emotions, too.
It's powerful stuff. And to help us break it down, we're talking about narratology.
That's right.
Which is the study of narratives or storytelling.
Yeah. And it's so fascinating because it helps you appreciate the techniques
Yeah,
that the authors or the filmmakers
Right.
use to create those experiences.
exactly. And to get us started, we've got this great academic overview of the subject.
Yeah.
Perfect for wrapping our heads around the core concepts.
Right.
So let's dive in.
Okay.
First things first. What are the fundamental building blocks of any story, whether it's ancient mythology or the latest blockbuster?
I think every story at its core has a few essential elements.
Right.
You can think of it like a house.
Yeah.
When you're constructing a house, you start with the foundation,
Right.
the framework,
Right.
and then you build upon that.
I like that. Okay, so what's the foundation of a story?
The foundation, we call that the narrative discourse.
Okay.
It's essentially the voice telling the story,
Okay.
whether it's written words on a page, a spoken tale,
Mm-hmm.
or even a combination, like in a movie, with
Mm.
voiceover narration.
So it's how the story reaches us,
Yes.
the medium it uses.
The medium, exactly.
Okay, then we have the story world, which is where the action happens.
That's right. All the setting, the characters, the events,
Okay.
all of that.
All right, so we have the voice telling the story and the world where it unfolds.
Mm-hmm.
What's next?
Now we get to the difference between the author and the narrator.
Okay.
So the author is the real-life person. Who created the story? The narrator is the voice they create to tell that story.
Okay.
And it might not always be the author themselves.
Right, so like in a memoir,
Yes.
the author and narrator could be the same person.
That's right.
But in a fantasy novel, they'd be different.
Exactly.
Like Tolkien isn't actually a hobbit
yeah.
who went on an adventure.
He's not.
Right.
Exactly. And the separation between the real-life creator and the storytelling voice
Right.
is so crucial. It allows for a lot more flexibility
Right.
and creativity in crafting the narrative.
Except the author builds the stage, and the narrator is like the performer bringing the story to life.
I like that. Yes.
Okay.
And another concept to understand is the difference between internal
Okay.
and external.
Okay.
So characters within the story are internal.
Okay.
They experience the events, interact with each other, drive the plot forward.
Okay.
We as the readers or the viewers are external to the story world.
Right.
So we're observing, we're listening, we're interpreting what's happening.
We're looking through a window into that world.
Exactly.
Right.
And that brings us to the idea of the narrative contract.
That would be contract.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of this?
I think so.
It's like an unspoken agreement
Okay.
between the storyteller and the audience.
Okay.
So the storyteller promises to make sense,
Okay.
follow certain rules of storytelling,
Right.
and create a world that we can believe in.
We suspend our disbelief.
Exactly.
Right, and go along for the ride.
And that allows us to really be swept away
Mm-hmm.
by the fantastical tale or empathize with characters who are completely different from us.
It's like a shared understanding that allows the magic to work.
Exactly.
That makes so much sense.
And I know it's a really fascinating dynamic.
Yeah.
And with all of these elements in place, the narrative discourse, the story world,
Right.
the author, the narrator, and the idea of internal and external, we can explore a lot of the deeper aspects
They're ready.
of how these stories are constructed.
It's like we've just assembled a toolbox. And now we're ready to see how it's used.
Exactly.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into those next layers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that we have our toolbox,
Right.
we can start exploring some of the more nuanced techniques.
Oh.
And one of the most fundamental is narrative perspective.
Oh, okay.
Whose eyes are we seeing the story through?
I've definitely noticed that some stories feel very intimate. Like you're right there
Yes.
with the character.
Exactly.
While others feel more like you're observing from a distance.
Exactly. And that's where the first person and third person
Right.
narration come into play.
Oh, yeah, I've heard those terms.
Yeah.
First person is like a diary entry
Yeah.
where the narrator uses I.
Right.
And then third person is more like a traditional novel
Yes.
where the narrator is outside of the story.
You got it. And we encounter these all the time.
Right.
Not just in books, but in Movies, TV shows, even video games.
Yeah, for sure.
They really shape how we connect with the story and its characters.
So in a first-person narrative, we're experiencing the world through the narrator's own thoughts and feelings.
Absolutely.
That's got to be powerful.
It is. It's like stepping into someone else's shoes.
Right.
And seeing the world from their unique vantage point.
Yeah.
Technically, we call this homodiegetic narration.
Homodiegetic.
I know, big word.
Yeah.
But it just means that the narrator is a character within the story world.
Okay, got it.
And then third person, where the narrator is external, is heterodiegetic.
Heterodiegetic.
Yes.
Got it.
So that one provides a broader perspective, often allows us to see the bigger picture and understand motivations of multiple characters.
So each perspective has its own strengths and weaknesses depending on what the storyteller
wants to achieve.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about a mystery novel.
Okay.
Like a first-person perspective might create a sense of suspense as we uncover clues alongside the detective.
Right.
But a third-person perspective might allow us to see the actions of the culprit.
Adding another layer of intrigue.
Oh, that's a good example.
Yeah, it's about choosing the right tool.
Yeah.
For the job, each perspective offers a different way to tell the story.
Okay.
And you can tell from the first few lines which perspective is being used.
Right.
A first-person narrator might say something like, "Let me tell you about the time I narrowly escaped a bear attack."
Yeah, because they're speaking from their own
exactly, an experience, whereas a third person might start with, "The old house stood on a hill.
Right.
Its windows dark and empty."
Yes. It immediately signals that we're with an outside observer.
Exactly. These subtle cues help us orient ourselves within the story world.
This is so interesting. It's like a whole new language.
It is.
For understanding how stories work.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there's even more to it than just
yes, there is.
First person versus third person.
You're right. We have to consider focalization.
Focalization.
Yeah, which takes things a step further.
Okay.
It's not as complicated as it sounds. Think of it this way. It's the lens through which the story is told.
Okay.
It determines whose perspective we're seeing the world through, what information we have access to, and ultimately how we experience the story emotionally.
Okay. I think I get it.
Yeah.
Can I get an example? I'm a big fan of visuals.
Of course. Have you ever seen that optical illusion?
Oh, yeah.
Where the image can be perceived as either the number 6 or 9, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, your perception can totally change.
Exactly.
Just from shifting your viewpoint.
And stories do the same thing with perspective.
Right.
Focalization is about manipulating our viewpoint to achieve different effects.
So the same event could feel totally different depending on whose eyes we're seeing it through?
Precisely. That's the power of focalization. And there's a couple of key types to keep in mind.
Okay.
Internal focalization is when we see the world through a specific character's eyes.
Okay.
Experiencing their thoughts, their emotions, their perceptions firsthand.
So we're like literally in their head.
Literally in their head.
Wow.
You feel what they feel. You fear what they fear.
Yeah.
You hope what they hope.
That's powerful.
It's a direct and intimate way of connecting us with the character's journey.
Okay, and what about the other one?
The other type is external focalization, where the perspective is outside any specific character. It's like having this invisible observer describing the events, but we don't have access to anyone's inner thoughts or feelings.
So it's a more detached perspective.
Yes.
Maybe offering a wider view of the situation.
Exactly. It can create a sense of objectivity or distance or even irony, depending on how it's used.
I never realized how much thought goes into shaping perspective.
A lot.
In a story, it's making me think about all my favorite books and movies in a new way.
That's the beauty of narratology.
It really is.
It gives us a deeper appreciation for the artistry of storytelling.
Right, and focalization isn't always fixed.
No, it's not.
It can shift within a story.
It can.
Even within a single scene.
Even within a single scene.
Wow.
So we might move from one character's perspective to another.
Wow.
Or even from an internal perspective to an external perspective.
That's crazy.
I know, it can add so many layers of complexity and keep the audience really engaged.
It's like the storyteller's constantly playing with our perception.
Yes.
Right, like leading us to see events in new ways.
Yes.
Wow. So to recap, we've got this basic narrative perspective.
Yes.
First person versus third person.
Yep.
And then focalization is like this extra layer of control.
Exactly.
Determining whose eyes we're seeing the story through at any given moment.
You got it.
This is incredible.
And understanding these concepts can really enrich our experience as readers and viewers.
Totally. But we've been talking about books.
Yes.
Written stories.
Yes.
how does all of this apply to movies?
That's a great question.
Yeah, surely film has its own way of handling perspective. It does. So we've been talking about focalization and how it uh, shapes our perspective in written stories.
Right.
But how does that translate to movies?
Right.
Filmmakers can't just write he thought or she felt on the screen.
Well, that's where the magic of cinema comes in.
Right.
Filmmakers use visual and audio techniques to achieve similar effects.
Okay, I'm all ears.
To textual focalization,
Yeah.
they're masters of manipulating our experience through what we see and hear.
What are some of those techniques?
One of the most powerful tools is the point of view shot,
Okay.
or POV shot for short.
Okay.
And it's literally when the camera takes the place of a character's eyes.
Oh, wow.
We see exactly what they see, as if we're experiencing the world through their senses.
That's like the ultimate form of internal focalization.
It is.
It takes us right inside the character's head.
Exactly. POV shots can be incredibly effective for creating empathy,
Right.
immersing us in that character's emotional journey.
Yeah.
Think about a horror movie. A POV shot from the victim's perspective can make us feel incredibly vulnerable.
Right.
And terrified as if we're the ones being stalked by the killer.
Yeah, it's like those moments in a video game where you suddenly switch to the first-person perspective.
Yes.
You instantly feel more connected to the character and the action.
Exactly. And it really highlights how POV shots can blur the lines between observer and participant.
So that's one technique. What else do filmmakers use?
Another one is a reaction shot.
Okay.
It's a close-up on a character's face as they react to something, revealing their emotions and how they're processing what's happening.
It's like a window into their inner world, even if they don't say a word.
Precisely. Think about those classic scenes where a character receives devastating news.
Yeah.
A tight close-up on their face, capturing that subtle flicker of their eyes.
Right.
Or the trembling of their lips.
Yeah.
Conveys more emotion than any dialogue could.
It's amazing how much emotion can be conveyed through a single facial expression. I guess that's why actors are so important.
Absolutely.
In bringing a story to life.
Absolutely. And filmmakers know how to utilize their skills to the fullest.
Yeah.
They'll use reaction shots to build suspense, create empathy, or even subvert our expectations.
So we've got POV shots, reaction shots. What about things like music and sound effects?
Yes.
I know those can have a huge impact on how I feel when watching a certain scene.
You're right. Music and sound are essential tools for manipulating our emotions and shaping our perception of the story.
Okay.
A soaring orchestral score can make a heroic moment feel even more epic.
Right.
While a jarring sound effect can make us jump out of our seats in fear.
It's like those classic horror movies that use silence to build tension and then suddenly...
Exactly. Filmmakers know how to use sound and music strategically to heighten our emotional response.
Yeah.
Keep us on the edge of our seats.
Yeah.
They understand that what we hear is just as important as what we see in creating that powerful cinematic experience.
This is making me realize just how much thought and artistry goes into every aspect of filmmaking.
Yes.
It's not just about pointing a camera and telling a story. It's about using all these subtle techniques to craft this really specific experience for the audience.
Precisely. And understanding these techniques can help us appreciate the craft of filmmaking on a whole new level.
Right.
We start to notice the choices that directors make, the ways they manipulate our perspective.
Yeah.
And the impact it has on our emotional response.
It's like we've been given this secret decoder ring for understanding the language of cinema.
Exactly.
Now I want to go back and rewatch all my favorite movies.
Yes.
With a fresh perspective.
I encourage you to.
Looking for those subtle cues.
It's amazing what you start to notice once you know what to look for.
Totally.
And it makes those repeat viewings even more rewarding.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the world of narratology.
And it has.
We explored the fundamental building blocks of stories, delved into different types of perspective, and even uncovered the secrets of cinematic storytelling.
Yes, we did.
I feel like I have a whole new toolbox for understanding how stories work and why they have such a powerful impact.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you.
Likewise.
And remember, this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
There's a vast and fascinating world of narrative theory out there waiting to be explored.
So to all our listeners, we challenge you to start paying closer attention.
Yes.
To the stories you encounter. Look for the narrative perspective, the focalization, the subtle visual and audio cues that shape your understanding and emotional response.
That's right.
You might be surprised at what you discover.
And who knows, maybe you'll even be inspired to tell your own stories.
Right.
Armed with this newfound knowledge.
It's a great point. The world always needs more good storytellers.
Yes, it does.
So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those stories coming until next time on The Deep Dive.
See you next time.